Next, we have Martin Hoshino's regular administrative report.
Thank you, Chief. Members, as is tradition, the written report is in your materials and in your packet, but I want to address a couple of items, extracting it from the report, and then add some things that I'd like to showcase and highlight that are not in the report. The report does chronicle the activities of your advisory committees. 22 of them and their work groups were convening to address their respective charges and directions that you have given to them. Some of the areas that we were looking at were improving ability to pay practices so that we may more effectively address fairness and proportionality issues relative to the impact of the current fines and fee structure on low-income and vulnerable groups. And you also have another very important group working on pretrial detention reform, for which I believe you will be hearing reports later as that group concludes its work closer to the end of this year. In the area of education, more than 35 live and online education and training programs were conducted for judges and court employees on a diverse range of judicial administration topics, including new judge orientation, as mentioned by the Chief, felony sentencing, the overuse of psychotropic medication on children in foster care, business processes reengineering, and a youth court summit, more about which I would like to showcase for you as I conclude my report. Internally, over the last several months, we've also been increasing internally our training on diversity, sensitivity, implicit bias, and we expect more of that type of training going forward because in reality, it is the very first goal and the most important goal of the Judicial Council, which is access, fairness, and diversity. And this is essentially the Judicial Council's DNA. With respect to budget, and you can't have a report, it seems, these days without talking about budget and fiscal matters. Here we are at this point in time. It is July. We are closing out the fiscal 16-17 year and wrapping most of that up, at the same time getting ready all of the reports necessary for this body's deliberations for the coming fiscal year that is upon us, effective the beginning of this particular month. And in fact, the vast majority of your agenda today reflects that, as you will entertain decisions related to the allocations for this year, as well as the preparation of automatically now, no time to rest, the budget change proposal process for the fiscal year that comes after this year. We all know the governor signed the budget, and so that being effective, it's time for you to entertain these decisions. Accordingly, the focus of this meeting is very heavily in that regard. I would spend more time about it, but you're going to get a report from Judge Rubin as well as Justice Humes later from their committees that operate in this respective area, as well as Judge Conklin from the Trial Court Budget Advisory Committee. And so I will defer the more longer-winded discussion of the budget that I usually do here. But I do want to stop and acknowledge the leadership and support of Judge Conklin through this particular year and in the year that is in fact coming, as well as the support that he is getting from our staff in the fiscal services area in the form of our director, Zlatko Theodorovich, as well as his deputy director, Lucy Fogarty. And I could list the team on and on and on and on, but they know who they are, and some of them are in the audience here today. On a more pleasant note, also, I want to acknowledge that we were able to appoint a new director of our CFCC unit, Charlie Deppner, who many of you know, sorry about the acronym, for the Center for Families, Children, and the Courts, who has been really the number two or the deputy there for many, many years. Folks may remember we lost an icon in this area in the form of Diane Nunn last year as she went on to another future for her. But Charlie has been here for the last 13 years, I believe, or so. She has dedicated her life to public service. She's a long-time public service person. She's already been integral and intimate with the operations of the council in that particular program, and it gives us great comfort that she is willing to step in, ready, made for the position, and I think that gives us confidence that we're not really going to lose the momentum and the progress and the status of that particular program. She's on vacation right now, so she can't be here to hear me pile it on and to thank her for doing all of this, but I've done so privately. I just wanted to take the opportunity to do it publicly and make the council members aware. So today I wanted to save the best for last. I wanted to highlight and showcase a very good thing that occurs in our system, not just for the purposes of awareness, because the work that is done in this particular area is warranted, and it really does make a difference in a lot of lives. It's one of the examples of the programs that's spearheaded in the council through the program that I just described with Charlie, which is the Center for Families, Children, and the Courts, and it's done so in partnership with the California Association of Youth Courts. The 12th Annual Youth Court Summit took place at the end of June, and for many of you who already know, the goal of the youth course is to act as a diversion program, which is to help youth from actually entering the juvenile justice system in the first place. Nearly 300 youth and adults participated in this summit. It has teens between the ages of 12 and 17, judges, attorneys, probation officers, other law enforcement officials, teachers, counselors, education staff, and community leaders. Through workshops and plenary speakers, the summit provides programs on juvenile court diversion, truancy prevention, civics education, and best practices. A couple of highlights for the programs that exemplify the level of discussions that are occurring and taking place around the youth course. There was one very important timely session called Talking It Through, a conversation between youth and police. And in this session, it featured panelists in an open discussion about building stronger and more positive relationships between police and young people. Police officers from the various counties and some of the researchers that are studying this relationship between police and community facilitated dialogue in a question and answer format. The summit's keynote speaker was Dr. Kimberly Norwood. She is a law professor at the University of Washington and author of Ferguson's Fault Lines, the Racequake that Rocked the Nation. Dr. Norwood's presentation focused on her research on implicit bias, her work in Ferguson, and how youth courts can make a difference in their communities in the face of this national burgeoning issue. More than 70 high schools in California operate youth courts. The top case types that bring kids to the youth court are alcohol abuse, other substance abuse, and shoplifting. Teen peer courts in Shasta County hear about 250 cases a year. Riverside hears about 150 cases a year, and in Los Angeles, with 41 youth courts, they hear about 1,600 cases per year. This is just to give you a sense of the dimension of it. The LA Superior Court judge, who many of you know, David Wesley, who happens to also be the president of the California Association of Youth Courts, has shared at least the anecdotal evidence that suggests that less than 5% of offenders tried in teen courts repeat their crimes. It's a lower rate than that of juveniles tried in traditional courts. Since the first summit 12 years ago, with 26 participating courts now, thousands of teens across the state have benefited from this innovative approach to administering justice. And it's just a great example and a success story to stop at this particular moment, I think, to highlight and showcase and to make you aware of it. And so I wanted to share it with you this morning. Chief, members, that would conclude my report for today.